Rajat, thank you for joining us. It's so good to be connecting to you. And before we get to the further details, please tell us where you are joining us from and how has the last few days been for you? What have you been up to?
So I am currently based in Goa, and the last few days have been particularly memorable for me and kind of momentous for me because I got engaged last week. Yeah, so a bit of a life-changing event right there. Apart from that, I'm working on my second book right now, which is also a travelogue. So that takes up a bunch of my time. And yeah, that's it for now.
Many congratulations for the engagement, and we hope the next phase only brings you more happiness, joy, and lots of companionship. So congratulations again. Uh,
Thank you.
right. We wanted to connect to you and understand a little bit about the behind the story of your first travelogue. We know the second one is in making. And the first one came out in 2019. It was called Trucks Day India. And please tell us a little bit before we get to the book part of it, what has been the most intriguing factor about trucks? Why this interesting name, and is there a story about trucks that you discovered or helped you get on this journey?
Well, trucks are something which I have noticed since I was a child, as I'm sure many of us have. Due to the colorful nature, the kind of cryptic quotes that are written on the back of them, and yeah, I'm probably the outlier in the sense that I actually pursued that interest in and traveled with truck drivers across India. But what really struck my interest was the fact that in spite of the simple fact that truck drivers are responsible for the conduct of our economy. They are such a crucial component. They are the backbone of our economy. Very little had been written about them and about their lives on the road. What are their experiences like on the road, navigating Indian highways? So I thought that it was material fit enough to be a travelogue, and I had a sense of adventure as well, which is why I said that it makes sense for me to possibly go on a journey with them. And I learned a lot of things about trucks on the way. Because very little had been documented about it, I didn't have access to previous research, or there's not a lot of academic work done on it either. So most of my learnings were on the road while traveling. So, for instance, I found out how trucks are made in the first place, because we like to think that trucks, for instance, just come out of the factory looking like that. But the truth is much more interesting, because almost of the trucks that we see are hand built by artisans in these workshops, and it's a very elaborate process which takes a month. And truck art also, where it came from, what might be the roots of this colorful tradition, and why it is so peculiar to the Indian subcontinent. All these sort of learnings happened on the road, and due to further research as well, once I got the basics right.
Sure. Learning on the road, learning on the go, it sounds very fancy. And then to be able to pull it off, I'm sure it must be a completely different ball game. What this tells us about you from the overview or the oversight part of it is you are adventurous. You like to travel, and you have been intrigued by trucks and you wanted to know more and be a part of it. So we understand that. But please tell us a little bit about your background and when you finally decided to proceed with this journey, and eventually be a part of that travelogue. How is the reaction of people who are closer to you, who belong to you? Were there inhibitions? How did you go about tackling them, and what was the approach like?
So, beginning with my background, I was born in Karnataka, coastal Karnataka, which is where my native place is. I was raised largely in Mumbai, in a middle class family, and like most middle class families, I developed an interest in pursuing engineering, and eventually wrote JEE, cleared it, and joined IIT Kanpur in as an electrical engineer. And after that, I worked in a management consultancy for a year uh, before I switched to journalism, because I had an interest in reading and writing, right since childhood, which I also pursued during my IIT years. But I thought that I should take the plunge in my early 20s when you have some breathing room for experimentation, and when life's responsibilities have not really, started weighing you down in so many ways. So in my early 20s, I thought it makes sense to try my hand at reading, writing, and which is why journalism made a lot of sense, because it gave you an avenue to read, write, travel, which was the three main interests which I wanted to pursue in my early 20s. So I joined journalism. I studied at the Asian College of Journalism, after which I worked as a business journalist. And this idea of traveling in trucks really crystallized during my while I was working as a business journalist. And one of the formative influences actually for this book came from another book which I happened to stumble upon in the ACJ library. It was called A Free Man by Aman Sethi, and it documented the lives of immigrant laborers in Delhi, their daily lives. And I found out that I thought after reading that, I realized that it is possible to write about the everyday lives of ordinary Indians and make it interesting, make it informative, make it insightful. It is possible, and that sort of gave me confidence that perhaps my idea of traveling with trucks wasn't entirely foolish. So, uh, so once I was working as a business journalist, uh, I pitched to my editor the idea that, ma'am, see, I have this idea in mind. I'm going to travel across India in trucks, and I'll have to leave this job because I'm planning to do this for 3-4 months. And but she was very, very kind, and she said that why don't you write a 6-part series for us based on your journey, and you can draw your salary while you're traveling. So that really helped my case in the sense that I had some sort of institutional backing. I mean, it was ultimately when you're on the road, you are on your own. There's no backing, and nothing works. But there was at least I had a purpose that okay, I have to write these 6 stories, and I have to collect enough material. I have to record whatever I see. I have to write down everything. So I carried my notebooks with me, and yeah, that's how it worked. But another influence actually which really helped me during this period was my experience in Sainik School, Satara. So I studied in a military boarding school. So that really helped, because the kind of physical and mental endurance that military school life teaches you, because it's a very, very regimented, very, very taxing routine that you have to follow when you are in a military boarding school. So Sainik School Sadara is run by the Ministry of Defense, and so it follows all the trappings of the army, right, from the hierarchy to the discipline, everything. So that really helped my case, because in long journeys like these, it's often all about your mental endurance.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sounds great. I want to change the tangent a little bit. You are not somebody who's had an initial support or background of literature or writing. You've done engineering, then you moved to journalism, and then the book happened because you had an idea, you wanted to pursue it, you talked about it at your workplace, and they were supportive enough, and then it sort of moved on. Um, for a lot of people right now, especially the youngsters, there are so many choices. But I think what doesn't become an advantage, especially for Generation Z, is they're not very sure if they want to go ahead with whatever their heart truly desires. And that's when the conflict of, oh, but what if it does not pan out? And that question always is there. And there is no one person who they can go to and would be able to give a perfect answer to this. So and people would be like, you got to take chances, you got to be on your go. You're someone who has done it, you continue to do it. For anybody who has those questions around and wants to follow their passion but is not able to for some reason, if you were to tell them something, how would you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is the golden era for pursuing your passion. I mean, there has never been a better time in the history of humankind to be alive if you want to be pursuing your passion. I mean, it's important to remember that context, that larger, broader context in which we live in, because it's easy to, you know, get disheartened, or, the fact that You see that there are so many people who are trying but they are not succeeding. You see that, and this is the kind of examples that your parents would also often give you, that this didn't work out for him. You should better to stick to the safe path, and so on. But I would say, because of the creator economy that has emerged in the last 5 years or so, I mean, this is the age for anyone with a creative side to take it up as a. I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm always been a moderate. I mean, there's not. I mean, any kind of extreme move is, I would say, not wise in many ways. So it's important to balance things out. Uh, While you're, say, pursuing your career, so to say, it's always you can always take up side projects which take up 2-3 hours a day. 2-3 hours a day that you devote to that particular thing, and otherwise you are living your life as originally planned. So it's important to take small steps, and eventually, once you realize you've crossed a certain threshold and you can take the plunge fully, only then does it make sense, instead of just leaving everything and just saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm personally of that opinion, that it's because anyway, creative activities are not something that you can do all day. Even for as a writer, I realize I cannot write for more than 2-3 hours a day. There's no way. My mind stops working. And so it's important that you have that other life also. I mean, nobody can be creative all day. So it's important that you maintain a balance between your creative life and your otherwise normal life that earns you a living, and so on. So that's how I would approach this thorny question.
Sure, Tony. Yes, thank you. I think those were great insights, and those are very doable for people to take this up. I wanted to ask you, over the past few years, and you've lived enough to understand how an artist is viewed as in India. You tell them, "What do you do?" I'm a musician. No, but what do you really do? We're used to this approach. Passion economy is really booming. It is the future. You mentioned about creator economy, and especially since COVID hit, because a lot of people, almost all of us, were homebound for a long period of time, and the world seemed to have realized the importance of artists, and the art in any form truly came to heal. Do you believe that in a post-pandemic world, artists are being viewed at differently? I ask this question from a point of introspection by artists themselves, because they also got a lot of time to think about the kind of work they were doing before, the realization they had during this time while they spent so much with themselves, the nature of work they would like to do thereafter. So do you feel, as someone who is creatively engaged with writing, reading, that kind of audience, that there has been a shift in how artists view themselves and the kind of art or work they would want to create further?
Yeah, I mean, we've all realized that what really keeps us going in this world is not just food and all these basic necessities. It is engagement with the wider world through art, and this is especially in the COVID times, when we have been stuck, when actual access to the world has been denied. We have realized the value of art. I mean, that is really what stays with us, right? I mean, it's not the everyday experiences that often stay with you. Those memories just disappear. But it is that moment of engagement with a piece of work, piece of art, or piece of, say, OTT, or whatever you say. I mean, everything is creative work, right? So I mean, artists definitely have themselves realized that, I'm sure, that what they do is of value. And society at large also, I hope, I mean, I can't speak for them, but I really hope that they have also changed their mind, especially Indian society being the way it is, being conservative, being risk averse. So I hope that they realize that ultimately all things of beauty come from some element of risk, and some element of plunging into the unknown, which is what artists do, right, all the time.
Absolutely. Very, very well put. Okay, I have one last question, which will, I think, be a segue into what you've already been talking about. One book is done. The second is what you're working on. You're also preparing for civil services. I wanted to understand, what are some of your dreams like, which you want to live and have not lived yet? How do they look like?
My dreams. I mean, I want to travel India. I mean, I want to travel across India. What really drives me is writing about the everyday life of ordinary Indians. That is what really drives me. I mean, journalism often, fails to do that because we are so driven by events, and it all has needs to be newsworthy, which is by definition anything out of the ordinary. So so because of that, the ordinary lives of everyday Indians is completely glossed over by most media. There are a few good outlets like People's Archive of Rural India, for instance, which is dedicated to this uh, purpose. But I personally feel that travel writing is something which is designed, which comes very close to fulfilling this purpose. It is tailor made to writing about ordinary Indians, their everyday hopes and aspirations, making the lives of ordinary Indians interesting to the wider. All, so most of us always write for a middle class audience, right? Because they are the ones who have the readership, who have the buying capacity, and so on. But what we see is that the middle class often lacks in empathy. We are so subsumed in our own little bubble, and the rest of India seems to us like the great unwashed masses, who are just there, an undistinguishable, undifferentiated mass of people whom you have to somehow negotiate to get your work done, and so on. But they also, most Indians also lead such rich lives, right? They have complex histories, their family backgrounds, everything plays into creating the person whom we see, and it could be any person. Every person, I believe, has something to teach me, and I want to learn that. I want to explore India as much as possible, and that is my dream. And much of it has remained unfulfilled because India is so vast, so complex. I may not that I think that will remain an unfulfilled dream all my life, no matter how much I travel.
Oh, I hope that's not the case. There's a life long enough yet to be lived, and we hope you get to do all that you dream of. Thank you for sharing the story. Thank you for sharing your related thoughts, and thank you for really pointing out the context of travel writing and the greater purpose of talking about the lives of ordinary, everyday people that we meet with, that live with us, and we do not seem to either recognize or be so self-centered that we don't end up acknowledging how the actual living is, and India comprises of that. So thank you
Yeah.
for the wonderful work that you're doing, and may you continue to do that, and we wish you all the best for the next legs of your journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.